Hello Pixie Doll, welcome back to the channel. I'm Krystle, aka the Wholesome Witch, and welcome to another Coffee Coven Chat. So I didn't have the idea for this video until about 20 minutes ago, but I thought if I'm going to film it, it's now or never. It's October. So in the spirit of the season, we are going to do a little spooky, ghosty Coffee Coven Chat today. And you'll probably see that I am not in my usual surroundings. I'm away at the moment with my partner. She had like a work event and I just came to enjoy the hotel room really, which is rather comfy and just a little outdated with the wallpaper behind me. But super cute room. It's nice and cozy and my house is so cold right now that I am loving how warm the room is. It's great. And I just thought, I'm here on my own tonight. She's at her event and I thought it would be a good moment to film this one. And it's nighttime. I never film at nighttime. I usually film early in the morning, but it kind of goes with the topic if we're having a spooky little chat. So the house I grew up in was rather interesting. It had a lot of different energies depending on where you were in the house. And it's something I've always been sensitive to, not only the energies of people, but the energies of the spaces that I'm in. So there were quite a few spaces in this particular house that I grew up in that I frankly was just scared of. I didn't want to be in those spaces alone, and I had some unsettling experiences while growing up in the house. So grab a cozy beverage and let's have a little chat about them. And like I said, I'm filming at night and I don't know, the lighting in this room is not the best. I hope it's okay. I hope you can hear me okay. Yeah, we're just gonna go with it and hope it turns out. So I grew up in the same house from when I was a young child until I was about 15 years old, or maybe 16. I can't remember when we left the house. And it was an odd shaped house. Like, it was long, but it had a couple of areas that were like very separate from the rest of the house. And there were a few areas that I was just scared to be in, including my bedroom, which I never wanted to sleep in. I either wanted to sleep in the living room or in my mom's room because I just wasn't okay in that room, especially in the dark. I had a playroom. I didn't like to be in there because it just always felt like someone was watching you. And the attic, of course, right? Because whoever wants to spend time in the attic, but the attic and there was like a little off section of the house that led you to the attic with a few other rooms. Didn't like to go in there. I can probably count on one hand the times I actually went up there because it was not okay. The energy was not okay. There was definitely more than one entity in that house. And I'll tell you about a few of the things that I experienced. There was never anything violent, thank goodness, just unsettling. So my toy room was in one of the kind of hallway sections of the house, very separate from the main part of the house. And I wouldn't play in there unless I had a friend with me or unless my mom was with me or one of my sisters, because yeah, I always felt like someone was watching me in there. And whenever I would leave my playroom for the day, the next time I would go back, my toys were in different places. And my mom always tried to rationalize it, like I didn't remember where I put things. I remembered. They were not in the same place, basically ever. So I was always convinced there was some sort of child ghost presence in the house that was always playing with my toys. And then yeah, you just always felt like you were being watched when you were in that room. And then there was my bedroom, which had a totally different feeling, much more spooky, scary feeling than the playroom. I wouldn't sleep in there. I mean, I slept in there sometimes, but I was never okay. I was never okay sleeping there. I usually honestly slept somewhere else. And a few things that I experienced in that room, in my bedroom, was we used to have these clowns, right? Clowns, like that's not creepy enough, that kind of sat on a base and they spun around. And they used to spin around all by themselves. It shouldn't have been able to be a thing. Like, that shouldn't have been able to happen. But I've seen them spin around on their own. My sisters have seen them spin around on their own. We have no explanation for why they used to spin on their own, but they did. And there was another instance where I was in my room and the curtains were moving as if there was a wind going through them, but there wasn't. Like if you went over to the window, there was no wind, there was no breeze. But they would move on their own as if there was. And then another time in that room, this was the creepiest thing that happened to me in that room. The sun was making a light pattern on the wall, and there was a shadow on the wall, and it was of like a hand, and it was as if the hand was waving at me. I was a teenager when this happened, but I couldn't stop staring at it, one, and I was looking all around the room to see what could be causing this hand shadow, and it was going back and forth like this, as if it was waving to me. There was nothing in the room with me. There was no people, there was nothing moving. It was just me. And I was basically in shock, staring at this hand shadow on the wall that was waving at me. And I don't know how long I stood staring at it, trying to figure it out, until my dad came in the room and was like, "What are you staring at?" And it was like he didn't even see it. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't in tune like I was. Anyway, he came in and started talking to me and distracted me from the waving hand on the wall. But that was during the day, thankfully, but it was pretty creepy. There was another time, my house had a really long hallway, and at the end of the hallway was the kitchen. And you could see the kitchen table as you were walking down the hall. So I was standing in the hallway, and my dad was in his room, which was just off the hallway, talking to me. So he was in the room, I was in the hallway. And I turned my head to look down the hall for, I don't know what reason. There was no reason for me to turn my head and look down the hall, but I did. And in the kitchen, I seen a little girl standing there by the kitchen table. She was smiling. I can still picture her in my head. She had long brown hair, was wearing what looked like pajamas, like white pajamas, and it was only for a second. I turned my head and I seen her, and then when I went to turn it back to see if she was still there, she was gone. So I kind of thought it was like my imagination. Yeah, I was like, that must have been just in my head. I did not really see that. And my dad was there, so I wasn't alone, so I just kind of brushed that one off. I don't know what, I was trying to convince myself I didn't actually see anything. But then I didn't tell anybody about this. 2 weeks later, my friend was over at my house, and she told me that a few days prior, because she was there really often, she was like my best friend at the time. She said a few days prior, she had seen a little girl standing in a window on one of the upper floors of my house from our backyard. So we had a backyard and there was lots of windows. There was like 3 levels. My house, I'm making my house sound really huge. It was a big house, but we only lived on the top floor of the house, and then we rented the floors below us. So up in the 3rd floor window, she told me she saw a little girl, and she described her exactly as I had seen her. And I did not tell her this. Like I said, I didn't tell anybody. So when she told me that, again, I was in shock. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't believe her. I was like, "You're kidding me, right?" Anyways, I told her then about the little girl that I had seen. And yeah, from that moment, I figured that explained my toys always moving around, because this little girl was probably 8 to 10 years old. And I had a lot of Barbies in my toy room. I really loved Barbies. So that kind of made it make sense. I figured, wow, well, she must have been very happy to have all those toys to play with when I was asleep. Anyway, that was one thing. That was pretty unsettling, but she didn't feel threatening. So it was creepy, but I was okay with her. And then the most creepy of my creepy experiences in this house that I can remember anyway, because there was many. I did live there for over a decade, and yeah, there were so many spaces that just, you never felt like you were alone. You just never felt alone in that house. And the energies felt very different. So it definitely wasn't just this little girl. There was definitely at least one other thing there that was not quite as friendly as her. But like I said, nothing violent ever happened because I don't know. I don't know what I would have done if that was the case, because I'm not okay with those type of entities. Fascinated by the stories, but would not want to live in a place that had that kind of action going on. But I'll tell you, my most creepy experience that I had multiple times in this house is when I was a teenager. I moved my bedroom because I was a teenager. I wanted more privacy. So I moved my bedroom to the area of the house where my playroom was. And it was like 3 rooms that were down a separate hallway from the main part of the house. So they were really private and just really far away from like where my dad spent his time. And being a teenager, that's what I wanted, right? I wanted privacy. So I felt like I had my own little apartment down there with my room at the end of the hall like that. I did have to convince myself to do it though, because I knew that I never liked being down in that part of the house on my own. However, privacy for teenage me won over my fear of being down in that part of the house. So I moved my room. I didn't like the room I was in anyways, right? So, one scary room for another scary room. It was what was basically I was trading up for. However, this room I did sleep in because, well, I still slept in the living room sometimes, I'll be honest. I would sleep on the couch with the TV on some nights because I was just like too creeped to be in my room by myself. But I slept in my room most of the time. And 2 things would happen in that room when I was laying down for sleep that were just not okay. One thing, this wouldn't happen unless I had just laid down to sleep. I would sit on my bed a lot and just like read or write, do my homework, whatever. This only happened when I laid down for sleep. I would lay down, lights would be off, all cozy, and my bed would slightly, just slightly, like a slight vibration, it would start to shake. And again, there was no reason for this. It's not like my house was shaking. The floor was not shaking. There was no planes going over my house overhead. You know how your house can kind of, if a plane's really low, it can kind of vibrate. There was none of that. There was no explanation for this bed shaking. But it used to happen on a fairly regular basis. And one night my friend was sleeping over and it happened when she was there and she was not okay. She was like, why? What are you doing? She thought it was me. Anyway, it wasn't me. And I told her it just happened sometimes. So that would happen and I would have to like pep talk myself to go to sleep and just ignore it. Cause it was pretty creepy. And yeah, I just keep using the word unsettling because it was. And the other thing that used to happen was I would sleep with my door shut. And what sounded like footsteps outside my door, pacing back and forth. But not just pacing, but pacing as if the feet were dragging on the carpet, which just makes it creepy on a whole other level than regular footsteps, is the dragging. I don't know. The only people in the house were me and my dad. Nobody else lived there. And my dad was always like way at the other end of the house. Like his bedroom was down there, the kitchen, that's where he would spend his time. So he was nowhere near my room and he wouldn't be pacing outside my room anyway. So these 2 things would happen. And I remember some nights I would very often cover my head with the blankets because we all know when we cover our head with the blankets, we're safer, right? I don't know where that logic comes from, but it's the same as like not hanging your feet off the bed. I won't hang my feet off the bed. Yeah, if you also will not hang your feet off the bed because of unknown scary things that could get them, leave a comment down below and let me know because I know I'm not the only one. I don't hang my feet off and they have to be covered. Anyways, I would cover my head and just coax myself to go to sleep because if I'm hearing the draggy footsteps, if my bed is shaking even just a little bit, there's no explanation for these things. I am basically not okay. Not okay. It's not a good atmosphere to have to go to sleep in. Anyway, those 2 things used to happen really, very regularly when I had that room. So those were the worst two things for sure. And, you know, my sisters experienced things in the house growing up, and my mom too, only she wouldn't tell us. She would say it was all in our imaginations when we would tell her things. And she didn't say until I was a grown adult that she also had some, you know, odd experiences in the house that she just wouldn't tell us because she didn't want to scare us. But we all already believed in ghosts anyways, so if we didn't, living in this house would have made us believe in them. But I believe in all kinds of things, basically everything. So yeah, that was the most haunted place I ever lived, for sure. It had the most crazy energies. And the house, or the apartment that my partner and I rented in Toronto, never had ghosty experiences, but things felt a little bit odd when we first moved in, almost like the energies of the house weren't sure. They weren't sure if they wanted us there. That's how it felt when we first moved in. But we lived in this place for 10 years, and that unsure energy of the space faded over time. It just kind of settled, like whatever was in the house accepted us and were okay with us being there. But we used to say the apartment had a sprite because a sprite, or, you know, a trickster little ghost spirit, because things would just disappear. Things where we thought we knew where we left them would just disappear for days, and we could not find whatever it might have been. And then, you know, days later, it would appear in the most obvious place, like right on our bedside table, right on the, you know, right on the dining room table, just really somewhere very obvious where there's no way we would have missed the thing when we were looking for it. So this happened fairly regularly. And I remember one time my sister came to visit, and she lost things the entire time. She stayed with us for like a week on that trip, and she kept losing everything. And we told her to blame the sprite because, you know, we weren't touching her stuff. Anyway, that kept happening to her all week long. She wouldn't be able to find something, and then it would just be like sitting on top of her luggage where there's no way she could have missed it. So that used to happen in the house a lot, but it just kind of became a joke. We kind of got used to it. When we couldn't find something, it was like, oh, well, the sprite got it. And we just accepted that it would appear in a couple days. The basement of that house, though, was where our laundry was, and I did not like to go down there alone because it felt different in the basement. I mean, basements are creepy anyway, but yeah, it was a different energy in the basement than in our apartment for sure. And it was, again, that energy of you felt like you were being watched, and you felt like you weren't alone down there. So I would do the laundry on my own because I was a grown-ass adult, you know, and I was a big girl. I didn't need, you know, someone to escort me to the basement to do my laundry, so I would do it. But some days especially, I would find myself doing it really quickly because some days it felt more uncomfortable than other days. But nothing ever happened down there. Nothing moved. I never saw anything. It just felt not right sometimes. But the sprite in our apartment, sprite as we came to lovingly call it, just kind of became part of our existence there. Most of my supernatural experiences happened in the house I grew up in, and yeah, I've never lived in another house that felt like that. And I haven't experienced anything odd while living in the UK. I did have some very unsettling experiences on one of the ghost tours we went on the first time we visited Edinburgh. And it was, I mean, our storyteller was a very good storyteller, but the space that we were in just had all the wrong energy, and the energy in the space paired with what a good storyteller this guide was got me. It got me in my core, and yeah, I felt sick to my stomach. I could not shake it until the very next day. I couldn't sleep that night, and that was just a feeling. I didn't like see anything or anything like that, and that was the only time something like that happened over here. We've been on lots of ghost walks and ghost tours over here, and they're always really good, but that one was pretty special and unnerving. We went on one other ghost walk, and this was just really funny. We expected to maybe have some sort of supernatural experience based on this ghost walk, but we did not. So we were on the walk, and it was the last story of the walk, and He's telling the story about a hotel and one of the specific rooms in the hotel where people experienced a lot of different things, including like physical things, like feeling being touched, or was it like having someone like on you in the bed? I don't know. Pressure. And then at the end of the story, he tells the hotel that he's talking about, and it was like a little boutique hotel. And my partner and I looked at each other like, oh, that's our hotel. Then he says the hotel room number. And isn't it our hotel room number that he says? And we were like, you're kidding. We repeated the number back to him to make sure we didn't mishear him. And we were like, that's our room, that's our hotel. That was crazy. I've never been on a walk, because you know, when you go on walks around like cities, towns, they'll tell you things about specific buildings, often hotels where there's certain room that has, you know, stuff going on. I've never been the person staying in that room when I was on a walk like that before. So that was a really very weird and funny experience. However, I felt nothing in that room, nothing at all. So I don't know. I don't know if the guide was wrong, the ghost was on a break that day, but yeah, I kind of we went back to the room kind of like on edge a little bit and kind of even expecting something weird to happen. And no, nothing did. And I felt totally fine in that room. So I don't know what that was. But it was a funny experience that we had on a ghost tour anyway. I could talk about ghost tours because we've been on many, but that's for another video. Definitely for another video. And this is a pretty quick Coffee Coven Chat, but those are some of my experiences, and I thought it's October and it would be kind of fun to share some of them with you guys. I love to hear people's ghosty or supernatural experiences, and I would love if you would leave me a comment and let me know one of your stories if you have any, or if you believe in ghosts. If you don't believe in ghosts, just leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts. I always love to hear them. So please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It's really different from what I normally do. I normally don't talk about supernatural experiences on my channel, but I was thinking about them today and I just thought, hey, it might be kind of fun to share them. And I'll link the regular things down below, my newsletter, my spellbook, subscription, socials, all that good stuff. If you want to follow along, you can check the description below. And I will be back very soon with another autumn themed video for you guys. Until next time, I'm sending you many, many blessings. Bye.